Aachen, German pronunciation. Aachen, also known as Bad Aachen, is a spa and border town in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. Aachen was a residence of Charlemagne, and later the coronation place for German kings. Aachen is the westernmost city of Germany, on its borders with Belgium and the Netherlands. 61 kilometers west-southwest of Cologne in a former coal mining area. RWTH Aachen University is in the city. Aachen's industries include science, engineering and information technology. In 2009, Aachen was ranked 8th among cities in Germany for innovation. Name. The name Aachen is a modern descendant, like Southern German Aach river, stream, of Old High German Aha, water, stream, which directly translates Latin aqua, referring to the springs. The location has been inhabited by humans since the Neolithic era, approximately 5,000 years ago, attracted to its warm mineral springs. Latin aqua figures in Aachen's Roman name Aqua Grani, which meant granus or waters, referring to the Celtic god of healing who was worshipped at the springs. This word became Axe in Walloon and Aix in French, and subsequently Aix-la-Chapelle after Charlemagne had a cathedral built there in the late 8th century and then made the city his empire's capital. Aachen's name in French and the loan translation in German evolved in parallel. The city is known by a variety of different names in other languages. Aachen dialect. Aachen is at the western end of the Benrath line that divides High German to the south from the rest of the West Germanic speech area. To the north, Aachen's local dialect is called Ockerplatt and belongs to the Ripuarian language. History. Early history. Flint quarries on the Lausberg, Schneeberg, and Königshügel, first used during Neolithic times, attest to the long occupation of the site of Aachen, as do recent finds under the modern city's Elisengarten pointing to a former settlement from the same period. Bronze Age settlement is evidenced by the remains of barrows found, for example, on the Klausberg. During the Iron Age, the area was settled by Celtic peoples who were perhaps drawn by the marshy Aachen Basin's hot sulfur springs where they worshipped Granus, god of light and healing. Later, the 25-hectare Roman spa resort town of Aqua Grani was, according to legend, founded by Granus, under Hadrian, in California, A.D. 124. Instead, the fictitious founder refers to the Celtic god, and it seems it was the Roman 6th Legion at the start of the 1st century that first channeled their hot springs into a spa at Buckle, adding at the end of the same century the Munster Therme Spa, 2 water pipelines, and a likely sanctuary dedicated to Granus. A kind of forum, surrounded by colonnades, connected the two spa complexes. There was also an extensive residential area, part of it inhabited by a flourishing Jewish community. The Romans built bathhouses near Birchide. A temple precinct called Vernum was built near the modern Cornelie-Munster, Hückelheim. Today, remains have been found of 3 bathhouses, including 2 fountains in the Elisenbrunnen and the Birchide bathhouse. Roman civil administration fell apart in Aachen between the end of the 4th and beginning of the 5th centuries. Rome withdrew its troops from the area but the town remained populated. By 470, the town came to be ruled by the Ripuarian Franks and subordinated to their capital, Cologne. Middle Ages. After Roman times, Pepin the Short had a castle residence built in the town, due to the proximity of the hot springs and also for strategic reasons as it is located between the Rhineland and northern France. Einhard mentions that in 765–6 Pepin spent both Christmas and Easter at Aquis Villa, which must have been sufficiently equipped to support the royal household for several months. In the year of his coronation as King of Franks, 768, Charlemagne came to spend Christmas at Arcan for the first time. He went on to remain there in a mansion which he may have extended, although there is no source attesting to any significant building activity at Arcan in his time, apart from the building of the Palatine Chapel in Arcan and the palatial presentation halls. Charlemagne spent most winters in Aachen between 792 and his death in 814. Aachen became the focus of his court and the political center of his empire. After his death, the king was buried in the church which he had built. His original tomb has been lost, while his alleged remains are preserved in the shrine where he was reburied after being declared a saint. His saintliness, however, was never very widely acknowledged outside. In 936, Otto I was crowned king of East Francia in the collegiate church built by Charlemagne. While Otto II ruled, the nobles revolted and the West Franks, under Lothair, raided Arcan in the ensuing confusion. Aachen was attacked again, this time by Odo of Champagne, who attacked the imperial palace while Conrad was absent. Odo relinquished it quickly and was killed soon thereafter. The palace and town of Aachen received fortifying walls by order of Emperor Frederick Barbarossa between 1172 and 1176. Over the next 500 years, most kings of Germany destined to reign over the Holy Roman Empire were crowned in Aachen. The original audience hall built by Charlemagne was torn down and replaced by the current city hall in 1330. The last king to be crowned here was Ferdinand I in 1531. During the Middle Ages, Aachen remained a city of regional importance, due to its proximity to Flanders, achieving a modest position in the trade in woolen cloths, favored by imperial privilege. The city remained a free imperial city, subject to the emperor only, but was politically far too weak to influence the policies of any of its neighbors. The only dominion it had was over Burtscheid, a neighboring territory ruled by a Benedictine abbess. It was forced to accept that all of its traffic must pass through the Aachener Reich. Even in the late 18th century, the abbess of Burtscheid was prevented from building a road linking her territory to the neighboring estates of the Duke of Jülich. The city of Aachen even deployed its handful of soldiers to chase away the road diggers. As an imperial city, Aachen held certain political advantages that allowed it to remain independent of the troubles of Europe for many years. It remained a direct vassal of the Holy Roman Empire throughout most of the Middle Ages. It also was the site of many important church councils. These included the Council of 837, and the Council of 1166, a council convened by the antipope Pascal III. Manuscript production. Aachen has proven an important site for the production of historical manuscripts. Under Charlemagne's purview, both the Ada Gospels and the Coronation Gospels may have been produced in Aachen. In addition, quantities of the other texts in the court library were also produced locally. During the reign of Louis the Pious, substantial quantities of ancient texts were produced at Aachen, including legal manuscripts such as the patristic texts, including the 5 manuscripts of the Bamberg Pliny group. Finally, under Lothair I, texts of outstanding quality were still being produced. This, however, marked the end of the period of manuscript production at Aachen. 16th through 18th centuries. In 1598, following the invasion of Spanish troops from the Netherlands, Rudolf deposed all Protestant office holders in Aachen and even went as far as expelling them from the city. From the early 16th century, Aachen started losing its power and influence. It started with the crowning of emperors occurring not in Aachen but in Frankfurt, followed by the religious wars, and the Great Fire of 1656. After the destruction of most of the city in 1656, the majority of the rebuilding utilized the Baroque style. It then culminated in 1794, when the French, led by General Charles Dumouriez, occupied Aachen. Aachen became attractive as a spa by the middle of the 17th century. Not so much because of the effects of the hot springs on the health of its visitors, but because Aachen was then, and remained well into the 19th century, a place of high-level prostitution in Europe. Traces of this hidden agenda of the city's history is found in the 18th century guidebooks to Aachen as well as to the other spas, the main indication for visiting patients. ironically, was syphilis. Only by the end of the 19th century had rheumatism become the most important object of cures at Aachen and Burtscheid. Aachen was chosen as the site of several important congresses and peace treaties. The First Congress of Aachen on May 2, 1668, leading to the First Treaty of Aachen in the same year, which ended the War of Devolution. The Second Congress ended with the Second Treaty in 1748, ending the War of the Austrian Succession. In 1789, there was a constitutional crisis within the Aachen government, and in 1794 Aachen lost its status as a free imperial city. 19th century. On 9 February 1801, the Peace of Lunéville removed the ownership of Aachen and the entire left bank of the Rhine from Germany and granted it to France. In 1815, control of the town was passed to Prussia, by an act that was passed by the Congress of Vienna. The Third Congress took place in 1818 to decide the fate of occupied Napoleonic France. By the middle of the 19th century, industrialization swept away most of the city's medieval rules of production and commerce. Although the entirely corrupt remains of the city's medieval constitution were kept in place until 1801, when Aachen became the chef-lieu du département de l'Aroa in Napoleon's First French Empire. In 1815, after the Napoleonic Wars, the Kingdom of Prussia took over and the city became one of its most socially and politically backward centers until the end of the 19th century. Administered within the Rhine province, by 1880 the population was 80,000. Starting in 1838, the railway from Cologne to Belgium passed through Aachen. The city suffered extreme overcrowding and deplorable sanitary conditions up to 1875, when the medieval fortifications were finally abandoned as a limit to building operations, and new, less miserable quarters were built in the eastern part of the city, where drainage of waste liquids was easiest. In December 1880, the Aachen tramway network was opened, and in 1895 it was electrified. In the 19th century and up to the 1930s, the city was important for the production of railway locomotives and carriages, iron, pins, needles, buttons, tobacco, woolen goods, and silk goods. 20th century. After World War I, Aachen was occupied by the Allies until 1930. Aachen was one of the locations involved in the ill-fated Rhenish Republic. On the 21st of October 1923, an armed band took over City Hall. Similar actions took place in Mönchengladbach, Duisburg, and Krefeld. This republic lasted only about a year. Aachen was heavily damaged during World War II. The city and its fortified surroundings were laid siege to from 12 September 21 October 1944 by the U.S. 1st Infantry Division with the 3rd Armored Division assisting from the south. Around the 13th of October, the U.S. 2nd Armored Division played their part, coming from the north and getting as close as Würselen, while the 30th Infantry Division played a crucial role in completing the encirclement of Aachen on the 16th of October 1944. With reinforcements from the U.S. 28th Infantry Division, the Battle of Aachen then continued, involving direct assaults through the heavily defended city, which finally forced the German garrison to surrender on the 21st of October 1944. Aachen was the first German city to be captured by the Allies, and its residents welcomed the soldiers as liberators. The city was destroyed partially, and in some parts completely, during the fighting, mostly by American artillery fire and demolitions carried out by the Waffen-SS defenders. Damaged buildings included the medieval churches of St. Foilin, St. Paul and St. Nicholas, and the Rathors. Although Aachen Cathedral was largely unscathed, only 4,000 inhabitants remained in the city, the rest had followed evacuation orders. Its first Allied appointed mayor, Franz Oppenhoff, was assassinated by an SS commando unit. History of Aachen Jews. During the Roman period, Aachen was the site of a flourishing Jewish community. Later, during the Carolingian Empire, a Jewish community was found near the royal palace. In 802, a Jew named Isaac accompanied the ambassador of Charlemagne to Harun al-Rashid. During the 13th century, many Jews converted to Christianity, as shown in the records of the Church of St. Mary. In 1486, the Jews of Aachen offered gifts to Maximilian I during his coronation ceremony. In 1629, the Aachen Jewish community was expelled from the city. In 1667, 6 Jews were allowed to return. Most of the Aachen Jews settled in the nearby town of Burtscheid. On 16 May 1815, the Jewish community of the city offered an homage in its synagogue to the Prussian king, Friedrich Wilhelm III. A Jewish cemetery was acquired in 1851. 1,345 Jews lived in the city in 1933. The synagogue was destroyed during Kristallnacht in 1938. In 1939, after emigration and arrests, 782 Jews remained in the city. After World War II, only 62 Jews lived there. In 2003, 1,434 Jews were living in Aachen. In Jewish texts, the city of Aachen was called Aish, or Ash. 21st century, the city of Aachen has developed into a technology hub as a byproduct of hosting one of the leading universities of technology in Germany with the RWTH Aachen, known especially for mechanical engineering, automotive and manufacturing technology, as well as for its research and academic hospital Klinik am Aachen, one of the largest medical facilities in Europe. Geography. Aachen lies on the tripoint of Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium in the middle of the Meuse-Rhine-Euro region, which contains an open valley basin and includes tributaries of the Wurm and the Ruhr rivers. The city is located in the basin of the Meuse, directly on the northern edge of the Eifel region of the Rhenish Massif, about 30 kilometers north of the High Fen. The highest point of Aachen measures 410 meters normal null and lies in the far southeast of the city. The lowest point is 125 meters NN and is located in the north, on the border with the Netherlands. The length of the city border is 87.7 kilometers, 23.8 kilometers of which border Belgium and 21.8 kilometers border the Netherlands. From north to south, the city is 21.6 kilometers at its widest, and from east to west, it is 17.2 kilometers. Climate. As the westernmost city in Germany, Aachen and the surrounding area belongs to a temperate climate zone, with humid weather, mild winters, and warm summers. Because of its location north of the Eifel and the High Fens and its subsequent prevailing westerly weather patterns, rainfall in Aachen is comparatively higher than, for example, Bonn. Another factor in the local weather forces of Aachen is the occurrence of Fern winds on the southerly air currents, which results from the city's geographic location on the northern edge of the Eifel. Because the city is surrounded by hills, it suffers from inversion-related smog. Some areas of the city have become urban heat islands as a result of poor heat exchange, both because of the area's natural geography, as well as from human activity. The city's numerous cold air corridors, which are slated to remain as free as possible from new construction, therefore plays an important role in the urban climate of Aachen. The January average is 3.0 degrees Celsius, while the July average is 18.5 degrees Celsius. Precipitation is almost evenly spread throughout the year. Geology. The geology of Aachen is very structurally heterogeneous. The oldest occurring rocks in the area surrounding the city originate from the Devonian period and include Carboniferous sandstone, grey-wacke, claystone and limestone. These formations are part of the Rhenish Massif, north of the High Fen, in the Pennsylvanian sub-period of the Carboniferous geological period. These rock layers were narrowed and folded as a result of the Variscan orogeny. After this event, and over the course of the following 200 million years, this area has been continuously flattened. Anderson, Ernest Masson, Healy, David, ed. Faulting, Fracturing and Igneous Intrusion in the Earth's Crust 367. Geological Society of London. ISBN 1-86239-347-8. ISSN 0305-8719. During the Cretaceous period, the ocean penetrated the continent from the direction of the North Sea up to the mountainous area near Aachen, bringing with it clay, sand, and chalk deposits. While the clay is mostly found in the lower areas of Aachen, the hills of the Arcan forest and the Lausberg were formed from Upper Cretaceous sand and chalk deposits. More recent sedimentation are mainly located in the north and east of Aachen and were formed through tertiary and quaternary river and wind activities. Along the major thrust fault of the Variscan orogeny, there are over 30 thermal springs in Aachen and Berchtesgaden. Additionally, the subsurface of Aachen is traversed by numerous active faults that belong to the Rohrgraben fault system, which has, in the past, been responsible for numerous earthquakes, including the 1756 Duran earthquake and the 1992 Roermond earthquake, which was the strongest earthquake ever recorded in the Netherlands.